But I'm really curious because Washington it seems like there's a breaking news story every other hour right now coming out of Washington. So I'm curious, what challenges do you face now with your profession? Like, what are some of the key issues that you're working on or even tracking with pharmacy right now?
It's a good question. And this is something that we speak to quite often. And, one of the things I like to say to our membership and our leadership when they ask us about, what we advocate on, how we decide what we advocate on, and how we go about that. It's a simple process, but it could be pretty complicated. And one of the reasons for a lot of this complications is based on the politics. And as you can probably guess, politics plays a huge part fairly often. And what I like to say to folks is a lot of times the politics always gets in the way of the policy when it comes to certain things.
Sure. Yeah.
And so, there are certain obstacles and certain challenges with that. So I can give an example is obviously one of the things that we've been working on for quite some time now is trying to obtain provider status for pharmacists. And, we've done that through certain pieces of legislation going back 10, 12 plus years. And most recently, of course, with the ECAPS piece of legislation, which I'm sure you're familiar with. And I'm sure a lot of
We've heard about it. Yeah. Kind of like explain what being a provider, being classified as a provider would mean for a pharmacist.
So basically, CMS basically has something called the physician fee schedule, and they basically provide for Part B reimbursement for what they consider to be Part B providers under Medicare. And so one of the things that we've been looking at for quite some time now is to basically be part of that pool.
To justify them being covered by Medicare.
Under Medicare Part B.
Part B, okay.
And and there's a lot of nuances to that, and as you can probably guess, there's a lot of politics even involved with that, because at the end of the day, and I can say this coming from the physician side, is that it's a very small pool of money, relatively speaking. And of course, we're talking billions, but it's a relatively small pool of money that other providers are working with. And just to be truthful, they're not too keen on having to share that pool of money with other folks, and so we run into some obstacles, when it comes to things like that, from folks within other physician organizations, from, broader organizations such as the AMA, and even sometimes we receive some resistance on the Hill, just because folks aren't necessarily as keen as we'd like them to be. And
sure, different motivations for different people might not necessarily line up with yours.
Exactly, and so that's one of the challenges. But there's a number of issues that we work on, everything from speaking about drug shortages to PBM reform, and again to provider status. And so it just depends on the climate in Congress, that particular day, that particular week. But there are a number of issues that we are faced with and that we address on a day-to-day basis.
So you're right. There are so many issues that are affecting the profession right now.